It was late evening when Seagal stepped out of his car, the city lights flickering against wet pavement. He had just finished a long day and decided to walk for a few minutes, letting the noise of traffic fade into the background. This part of the city was quieter, alleys behind closed shops, overflowing dumpsters, the kind of place most people hurried past without looking twice. As Steven turned a corner, something unusual caught his eye near a pile of trash bags stacked against a brick wall. At first, he thought it was just discarded clothing, an old blanket tossed away like everything else. But then the blanket moved. He stopped. There, curled up on top of the trash, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. Her arms were wrapped tightly around herself, her face half hidden beneath tangled hair. Pressed against her chest was a small, scruffy dog, its ribs visible, its body tense even in sleep. Steven's heart dropped. They weren't hiding. They weren't playing. They were sleeping. Right there. On garbage. The dog lifted its head slightly, eyes opening just enough to watch him. It didn't bark. It didn't run. It simply stared, alert and protective, placing itself closer to the girl as if ready to defend her with its life. Steven took a slow step forward, then stopped again. He didn't want to scare them. The girl shifted, letting out a soft, exhausted sigh, unaware of the world around her. People walked past the alley entrance without looking in. Cars passed. Life went on. But for Steven, everything froze. How does a child end up here? He thought. And how long has she been sleeping like this? As he stood there, a heavy realization began to sink in. Whatever story led this little girl and her dog to this pile of trash, it was not going to be an easy one. And the truth was about to break his heart. Steven stood there for a long moment, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the faint rustle of plastic bags shifting in the breeze. He slowly crouched down, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. Years of discipline had taught him one thing: sudden actions only made fear worse. The dog noticed immediately. Its head lifted fully now, eyes sharp, body stiff. A low growl escaped its throat, not loud, but serious. Protective. Loyal. "It's okay, buddy," Steven said softly, holding his hands open so they could see he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." The growl continued, but the dog didn't advance. Instead, it leaned closer to the girl, placing itself between her and the stranger. The girl stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, wide and instantly alert. The moment she saw Steven, she jolted upright, wrapping her arms around the dog as if shielding it from the world. "Don't take him," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "Please, he didn't do anything." Steven felt a tight knot form in his chest. "I won't," he replied gently. "I promise. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." She stared at him, clearly unsure whether to believe a word he said. People had probably lied to her before. Promises were dangerous things when you were living on the street. Steven reached into his jacket slowly and pulled out a small bottle of water and a wrapped sandwich he hadn't eaten earlier. He placed them on the ground, then slid them closer with his foot, keeping his distance. "For you," he said. "And for him, if you want." The girl glanced at the food, then back at Steven. Hunger battled fear in her eyes. After a long pause, she broke off a small piece of the sandwich and gave it to the dog first. Only after the dog started eating did she take a bite herself. Steven noticed how carefully she chewed, as if she was used to making food last. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated. "Lily." "And your friend?" Steven nodded toward the dog. "Max," she said, her voice softening. She stroked the dog's head, and Max finally relaxed, though his eyes never left Steven completely. "You shouldn't be sleeping out here, Lily," Steven said. "It's not safe." She shrugged, a gesture far too mature for someone her age. "It's safer than other places." That answer hit him harder than anything else. Steven lowered himself to sit on a nearby crate, bringing himself closer to her eye level. "Where's your family?" Lily looked down at her hands. The dog pressed against her leg. "I don't really have one," she whispered. Steven felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just a lost child. This was something much deeper. Before he could ask more, a couple walked past the alley and glanced in briefly. When they saw Steven talking to the girl, they quickly looked away and kept walking, pretending nothing was happening. Steven clenched his jaw. This little girl had been invisible for a long time. And now that he had seen her, there was no way he could walk away. Steven took a slow breath, choosing his next words carefully. He didn't want to push her. Children who lived on the streets learned quickly that too many questions could be dangerous. "It's cold out here," he said gently. How long have you and Max been sleeping outside? Lily didn't answer right away. She picked at the torn edge of her sleeve, eyes fixed on the ground. Max sensed her discomfort and nudged his head against her arm, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. A while, she finally murmured. Steven nodded, letting the silence sit. Do you have somewhere you go during the day? She shook her head. We move around. If we stay in one place, people tell us to leave. Her voice was calm, but the words cut deep. Steven noticed the bruises on her knees, the dirt under her fingernails, the way her shoes were 2 sizes too big and barely holding together. This wasn't a one-night situation. This was survival. Where are your parents, Lily? He asked softly. She swallowed hard. My mom got sick, she said. Really sick. She went to the hospital and never came back. Her voice cracked just slightly. After that, everything got messed up. Steven's throat tightened. And your dad? He asked, barely above a whisper. She shook her head again. I don't know him. The alley seemed suddenly smaller, heavier. The city noise felt distant, like it belonged to another world. What about other family? Steven asked. An aunt, grandparents, anyone? Lily let out a sad little laugh that didn't belong to a child. They said they couldn't take me. Said they already had enough problems. Steven looked away for a moment, blinking hard. So you've been out here, by yourself? He asked. She nodded. At first I was scared all the time. Then I found Maximum. She smiled faintly and scratched the dog's ears. He was tied to a fence. Nobody wanted him either. Max wagged his tail slightly, as if proud. He keeps me warm, Lily continued. And he barks if someone gets too close at night. Steven felt something crack inside him. A child protecting herself with a stray dog because the world had failed her. Do you ever get help? He asked. Sometimes people give food, she said. But mostly they tell us we're dirty. Or they call the police. Her shoulders tensed. I don't like the police. Steven didn't respond right away. He understood why. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Lily, he said gently, if you could wish for one thing right now, what would it be? She didn't hesitate. A place where Max is allowed, she said. And where I don't have to wake up scared. Steven closed his eyes for a brief moment. This wasn't just homelessness. This was a child carrying more pain than most adults ever would. If you were in Steven's place right now, what would you do? Comment help below. Steven sat quietly, giving Lily the space to breathe after saying something so honest. The city noise returned in waves, sirens far away, a bus hissing as it stopped down the street, but in the alley, everything felt still. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, Steven said softly. But I'm listening. Lily hugged her knees to her chest. Max rested his head on her lap, eyes half closed but alert. After a long pause, she spoke again, her voice low, almost like she was afraid the words themselves might hurt. When my mom got sick, she said, we had an apartment. It wasn't nice, but it was ours. She swallowed. After she went to the hospital, I stayed with a lady from our building. She said it was just for a little while. Steven's jaw tightened. She changed, Lily continued. At first she was okay. Then she got mad a lot. Said I ate too much. Said my mom wasn't coming back and I should stop asking. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked at the hem of her shirt. One night she locked the door and didn't open it again, Lily whispered. I slept on the stairs until morning. Steven felt a surge of anger, but he kept his face calm. This wasn't about him. This was about her feeling safe enough to speak. I went to another place after that, Lily said. They called it a shelter. But they wouldn't let Max stay. Her eyes filled with tears. They said dogs weren't allowed. So I left. Max lifted his head, sensing her sadness, and licked her hand. I tried another one, she continued. Same thing. No dogs. And some people there were mean. They yelled at night. Steven nodded slowly. He'd seen enough to know how often systems failed the most vulnerable. So you chose the street, he said quietly. She nodded. At least no one takes Max away. A car slowed near the alley entrance. A man inside glanced over, frowned, and drove off. Another passerby muttered something about kids these days before disappearing into the night. Lily noticed. She always noticed. People think we're trash because we sleep on trash, she said, her voice flat. They don't know me. They don't know Maximum. Steven felt his heart break all over again. You're not trash, he said firmly. Neither of you. She looked up at him, surprised by the strength in his voice. "You're a kid who deserved help," he continued. "And a dog who stayed loyal when no one else did." Tears slipped down Lily's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. For the first time, she let herself be seen. Steven realized something then. This wasn't just a sad story. This was a mirror, showing how easily the world looks away, and how much damage that silence causes. And he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to look away. Steven stood up slowly, pacing a few steps away as if he needed air. Lily's words echoed in his head: locked out, nowhere to go, no dogs allowed. Each sentence felt heavier than the last. He had played heroes on screen his entire life, men who stepped in at the right moment and fixed everything with strength. But this wasn't a movie. There was no script. Just a child and a dog surviving where they never should have had to. He stopped and turned back to her. Lily watched him carefully, her body tensing again, as if she was afraid he might disappear like everyone else. "I'm not leaving," Steven said, reading the fear in her eyes. He knelt down so he was at her level, the cold concrete pressing into his knees. "I want you to know that first." She studied his face, searching for signs of lies. Max stepped forward and sniffed Steven's hand. For the first time, the dog didn't growl. He simply wagged his tail once. Steven felt his chest tighten. "I can't change what happened to you," Steven continued, his voice low. "And I can't pretend this world is fair. But I can promise you something." Lily tilted her head slightly. "What?" "You're not sleeping here tonight," he said. Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "And Max stays with you. I won't separate you." Tears rushed to her eyes so suddenly that she tried to blink them back. "People always say that," she whispered. "Then they change their mind." Steven shook his head. "I won't." He pulled out his phone and made a quiet call, turning slightly away but staying close enough that she could see he wasn't walking off. He spoke firmly, clearly, like someone used to making things happen, not through force, but through responsibility. As he ended the call, he removed his jacket and gently placed it around Lily's shoulders. It was far too big for her, but that only made her clutch it tighter. "Thank you," she said softly. Steven noticed how thin she was, how tired her eyes looked. No child should carry that much exhaustion. "Do you know what hurts the most?" Steven said quietly, more to himself than to her. "It's not that you lost everything. It's that so many people saw you, and chose not to stop." Lily hugged Max closer. "I stopped," Steven said. "And I won't pretend I didn't see you." Max sat beside him now, leaning slightly against his leg. That simple gesture broke something inside Steven. This wasn't about charity. It wasn't about being famous. It was about being human, when it mattered most. And as Steven looked at Lily, wrapped in his jacket, he knew this night would change more than just her life. It had already changed his. Within minutes, a car pulled up near the alley. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a quiet arrival, like this moment deserved. A woman stepped out, calm and warm-eyed, speaking gently as Steven introduced her to Lily. She didn't rush. She didn't demand answers. She simply crouched down and smiled. "Hi, Lily." "Hi, Max," she said, as if this meeting had always been meant to happen. Lily stayed close to Steven at first, her fingers gripping the sleeve of his jacket. Max stood alert but didn't bark. He watched. He always watched. "We're going somewhere warm," Steven said softly. "Just for tonight. Somewhere safe." Lily hesitated. "Max can come?" "Yes," Steven replied instantly. "He goes wherever you go." That was all she needed to hear. The drive was quiet. Lily stared out the window, eyes wide, taking in streetlights like they were something new. Max curled up at her feet, finally able to rest without fear. Steven sat in the front seat, watching their reflection in the glass, his chest heavy but hopeful. They arrived at a small, clean building, not flashy, not intimidating. Inside, the air was warm. Real warm. Lily instinctively hugged herself, unused to the comfort. A soft blanket was placed around her shoulders. A bowl of food for maximum hot soup for Lily. She held the cup carefully, hands shaking as if she didn't quite trust that it was real. Steven stayed. He didn't check his phone. He didn't rush the process. He sat there while Lily ate, while Max finished his food and curled up beside her, tail gently thumping once before going still. After a while, Lily looked up at him, her voice barely audible. "Are you going to forget me?" The question hit him harder than anything she had said all night. Steven leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "No," he said firmly. I won't forget you. And I won't disappear. She studied his face, then nodded slowly, as if storing the promise somewhere deep inside herself. I don't need much, she added quietly. Just, don't leave us again. Steven felt his throat tighten. You won't be alone, he said. Not anymore. As the night settled, Lily's eyes finally grew heavy. She lay down on the bed, Max curling beside her, his head resting protectively against her arm. Steven watched her breathe, slow, peaceful. For the first time in who knows how long, she was sleeping without trash beneath her and fear in her chest. Before he left, Steven paused at the door and looked back one last time. This wasn't a rescue scene. It was a reminder that sometimes, changing a life doesn't start with strength. It starts with not walking away. If you believe no child should ever sleep on the streets, type protect in the comments. The story didn't end that night. By morning, word had already begun to spread, not because Steven wanted attention, but because kindness has a way of traveling faster than silence. Someone who had seen Steven in the alley had recorded a short clip from a distance. It showed him kneeling beside a little girl, offering food, listening, not talking, not posing. Just being there. Within hours, the video was everywhere. People online didn't talk about Steven as an action star. They talked about him as a man. A human being who stopped when it was easier to walk away. Comments flooded in from around the world. This broke my heart. That little girl could have been invisible forever. This is what real strength looks like. But Steven didn't repost the video. He didn't issue a dramatic statement. Instead, he quietly followed through. Lily didn't go back to the streets. With Steven's help, she was placed into a long-term care program that allowed children to stay with their pets. Max wasn't separated from her, not once. Lily was enrolled in school, given clean clothes, regular meals, and something she hadn't had in a long time, routine. At first, she barely spoke in class. Loud noises made her flinch. She always checked to make sure Max was nearby. But slowly, day by day, the fear loosened its grip. One afternoon, a teacher noticed something written at the top of Lily's notebook. I am not trash. Steven visited occasionally, not as a celebrity, not as a savior, but as someone who had made a promise and intended to keep it. He listened more than he spoke. He asked about school. About Maximum. About what made her smile. And she smiled more often now. When asked about the incident in a rare interview, Steven kept it simple. Fame doesn't matter when a child is hurting, he said. What matters is whether you stop. The shelter that helped Lily began receiving donations after people learned about their work. Policies started changing. More places opened their doors to children with pets, understanding what Lily had already known all along. Sometimes, a dog isn't just an animal. It's family. But the most important change wasn't public. It was personal. A little girl who once slept on trash now slept in a bed. A dog who guarded her from danger now slept without fear. And a world that had looked away was reminded of something essential. Compassion isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It only asks one question. Will you stop when it matters? Medium White Star. If this story moved you, type protect in the comments. Medium White Star. Subscribe for more stories that restore faith in humanity.